Hello, what's going on, viewers? My name is Chris, and in this video, I'm going to tell you about being self-employed. I've been self-employed for the last 7.5 years, maybe more, and I'm going to tell you a story about how I got started off being self-employed to what led me to today, which on this YouTube channel in the year 2022, we made $40,000 Canadian, and I'm really happy about it. So I want to share with you sort of how I got to be self-employed and basically be free in my life, pretty much free. I mean, I'm starting to see the benefits of being self-employed here now. It's been probably more than 7-8 years at this point of actually saying that I'm actually self-employed. Before that, I was like trial and error living back at home, you know, and I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. So in this video, I want to share with you guys my experience being self-employed and how I got into being self-employed, how I pretty much pre-programmed myself to be self-employed from day one. I didn't even know I did this until I thought about it. There's not a lot of videos where people actually say what they did for the last X years being self-employed. So let's get to it. Press the like button, subscribe. This is VerrilloTrading. We help traders learn about the tools, methods, and problems related to trading. And I'm going to tell you the story. So it all started, guys, when I was about 15 years old, and I wanted to be a musical composer. And at the time I was growing up, I grew up, my father was a musician, and I was learning how to play music very young. I started playing guitar at the age of 11, 12, in 6th grade in high school. It all started from there, and then by 15, I was sitting in my room for 3 hours at a time trying to compose string quartets, quintets, and whatever I was working on, basically. So I had the dream that I could be sort of a freelance musician composer where I could actually get paid to compose pieces of music. I was very much, and I still am, super inspired by a lot of the music from about 300 years ago in the Baroque period, classical period, you know, Telemann, Johann Sebastian Bach, that kind of stuff. I'm very much into orchestral music and arrangement of music. And I do think that a lot of this stuff transfers very well into the coding and software development realm. I never actually got paid to compose a piece of music in all my years. I graduated a 3-year college program later on in musical composition and arrangement. And in that program, I actually got to show off a lot of my skills, stuff that I had been working on. So it made sense that the stuff I was writing was way more advanced than, you know, what other people were doing in my grade. I pretty much realized, or you know, you get forced to realize that that vision was not necessarily aligned with reality, because it was sort of a childhood dream. And most childhood dreams, like, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this, or I want to be a musician or something like that, but you're just saying that. You're not saying it because you actually have, you know, opportunities in front of you that are aligning, that can allow you or facilitate those things happening. I got into investing and trading around 4.5 years ago at this point, in the year 2018, about the second or third quarter. Before that, I was doing music for a long time. I played in a few corporate rock bands that paid pretty nice, did some weekly gigs, and I was street performing during the summertime here in my home city. And that paid pretty well, guys. I'll be honest with you. I was playing solo acoustic guitar, and I was making good money for a 22-year-old with no expenses, little to no expenses, and basically no liabilities. What I realized from all this is that I pretty much pre-programmed myself with my original dream, my original goal of being a musical composer. I pre-programmed myself from the start that I was gonna be self-employed. I probably could count on one hand the number of regular jobs I've had in my life. The one I remember the most is working at the gym, where I had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go work the morning shift. These types of regular jobs, they were far and few for me in the last 10 years or so. I basically have always pretty much been self-employed, making very minimal amounts of income until today, of course, where I've actually started to put a lot of the skills that I've learned during those years and put them into something that I'm envisioning, but also something that has opportunity in real life, which is related to this YouTube channel. And I guess you could say I was very privileged as a child. And my mom was working full-time back in the day, and my dad was on and off with work, but they still supported me in everything I wanted to do, and I never really got any friction from them regarding wanting to be self-employed or wanting to do whatever I wanted. I had a good backing and a good head on my shoulders from the start, and if I ever have kids one day, I am going to make sure I offer them a similar opportunity, but also try and guide them as well as I possibly can. In the year 2016, I had the opportunity to move out of my parents' place and become pretty much fully independent. Before that, I was self-employed, but living with my folks. So I had the opportunity to test stuff out. I would go out, street perform, see how much I can make, come back. And basically that was going on for a few years until stuff started getting shady at my parents' house, because their relationship was kind of falling off the cliff or whatever. That sort of set a really good foreground for me to, you know, learn what it's all about to be self-employed. I wouldn't ask my parents for cash that much, only if it was an emergency. But you know, it helped to have that basis of security there that I could always bounce back on in the case that shit hit the fan. Shit never really hit the fan until my parents started having issues with their relationship. And at that point, I was also very lucky because I got presented with an opportunity to move out into my own place. A friend of mine had an apartment that he was living in for a while, and he was going out on a musical tour, and he wanted someone to sublet the place. So I moved in there, started paying rent. And obviously, my parents were not for it. My mom was not for it. Obviously, your mom never wants you to move out, but I knew I had to because I needed that peace of mind away from, you know, the constant issues going on with the parents. I had to get out, basically. So I moved out in the month of May of 2016, and basically full-time gigging musician and street performing in the summertime from 2015 to 2019. During that time, I also learned how to tune and repair pianos, which is another huge problem-solving sort of trade. And I stopped doing that just because I got busy with other stuff at this point. Because honestly, I didn't really like it that much anyways. We started getting into investing in 2018, opened up a Questrade account at TFSA, started trading US stocks, Canadian stocks, and all that stuff. My first trade ever was Caterpillar stock, and that was a great trade. It was obviously your first trade ever is always a winner. And 2020 started the YouTube channel, started talking about trading software, and then COVID hits, and then for whatever reason, a lot of those videos just took off, especially the ones related to TWS Interactive Brokers. If you guys watched to this point, press that like button if you're enjoying this content. Let's have a sip of coffee for a break. So what I realized today is that I'm actually using a lot of the skills I developed over the years in my late teens and early 20s, and I'm using them now and actually putting them to good use and generating a form of an income with them. Whereas before, I was just tinkering around learning these things. I didn't necessarily know how all those skills were going to serve me in the future. So some of these skills are like basic video editing and video production, keyword basic. The second thing would be stage presence and dealing with an audience, you know, learning how to engage with an audience to some degree when it comes to, you know, public speaking, talking with people, and just overall stage presence. And then the last thing would be problem solving, and specifically problem solving with software, because I used to do a lot of work with music production software. Probably even way before high school, I was messing around with a lot of different music production software, just trying to learn stuff and learn how to program stuff, basically. And at the time, I was programming music notes into a software timeline. And also, my dad was a musician. He would work with different types of software like Cubase. It's interesting how this has come full circle, because now I pretty much make money troubleshooting trading software and, you know, solving people's problems to help traders like you out there make more money for your business and for your trading account. Like, if I was at a point where nothing was working and I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't know what was generating me income, I didn't know where I was at in my life, then sure, I'd probably be just doing still music or trying to do some other trade. But what I've made the decision to do is become more aligned with this YouTube channel and the trading world, because this is something that I have the opportunity to leverage, and it can offer me more long-term stability if I ever want to have a family one day and support a family. And by the way, guys, I'm sitting in my Herman Miller chair here, and this thing is just so comfy. I call this the programmer's chair because as soon as I got this chair, I don't know what happened. I basically became a programmer. So I'm sitting in it and it's so freaking comfy. So if you're ever looking for an office chair and you got some bucks to spend, check out Herman Miller chairs. Not sponsored, by the way. This video is sponsored by VerrilloTrading.com, which is under maintenance but will be available soon. Leave a like on the video. So as you get older, you got to make more wise decisions, and you got to kind of think about leveraging things that are working for you. You know, when there's clearly a ball rolling in one direction, you start to see opportunities that are aligned with the direction of the ball that's rolling. You also have to understand that in business, opportunities come. There's an opportunity, but they don't stay around too long. And this is one of the most important things about being self-employed. So these are my main points about being self-employed. Hopefully you guys can learn from them. I think that being self-employed is a lot like understanding a business of trading, because that's what you're doing. You're running your own company, you're running your own business. And you have to run the back end of the business as well as the front end of the business, especially when you're starting off. You are an independent trader. Even in some countries, that's what it's called. Being self-employed is called being a trader, I think in the UK. I think if someone has been working a corporate job their whole life, or regular jobs, going from job to job, they're going to have a harder time becoming self-employed. You can't just go from being used to working regular jobs and, you know, having that stability, that stable pay, or even living paycheck to paycheck, which I think a lot of people still do these days. I mean, I know a few people who do. people like that can't really just go into being self-employed right off the bat like cold turkey. What someone's going to tell you, have an idea about this for a business. By the time you're able to start building that out, it's going to take a lot of time. You're actually better off working on it after hours. You have to make a sacrifice, and we're going to get to that. It's all about sacrifices when it comes to being self-employed. You're making sacrifices in the short term for the potential of some sort of a long-term opportunity, of some sort of long-term reward, or long-term, freedom, I guess, is part of the reward. So the one thing I think is so important about being self-employed is you have a purpose to what you're doing. You have sort of an end goal. You have a purpose. You have something that keeps you going every single day, a reason why you're doing the things you're doing. So being self-employed with a greater purpose involved generally helps from detaching from outcomes and individual events. And this is something that you need to train yourself to do if you want to become self-employed. Now, I think it's like default for humans to be attached to outcomes, because we're so used to being programmed in that way, where you do a test, you do well, you get the result back, or you do something and you get the result back immediately. Sometimes this is fine, but when it comes to building something out that has a longer term time frame, and also where there's an element of uncertainty, where you don't know necessarily what the outcomes are going to be, you have to detach yourself from the outcomes. You have to have a bigger reason as to why you are deciding to do this. It can't just be about money. So someone that's experienced with being self-employed is more realistic with their expectations and is less attached to the outcomes. They know that for every new endeavor that they take on, there's going to be more problems and more unexpected events down the road. And I guess this is just how it works. When you're building something out, you start working on it, you're all happy and excited, and then you reach a fork in the road and you're like, uh-oh, now this is quite a bit of a more tough decision than I was anticipating, and then you have to make a choice. And then you end up making that choice, which will then eventually present you with more complicated decisions down the road. So it doesn't really get easier. At the point where you start to experience the freedom of being self-employed and the actual benefits of it is going to be probably a long time. That's why I'm making this video 7.5 years later, saying, now I've actually started to see some of the benefits of being self-employed. And I'll get to it later in the video, but I can wake up and be free, basically. So let's go on, and I want to tell you guys about the main sacrifices that are necessary for being self-employed. And I guess you could also say these are sort of the cons associated with being self-employed. These are the same reasons why not everybody is going to be able to be self-employed, in my opinion. Okay, the first thing is bankroll management and lifestyle management. You can't live like someone paycheck to paycheck. You just simply can't if you're self-employed, if you run your own company. You just can't. You need a safety net in case things go wrong. You can't expect to lease cars or live a lavish lifestyle, at least at first. For me, it's been pretty much a minimalist lifestyle. This is why most people coming from working years of regular jobs should not go straight into being self-employed, because they're used to that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, and where they can go and lease a car, and let's say they make $3,000 a month or whatever, they can take $500 and put it on one of these BMWs, and then they get the status and the clout. But then they want to say, you know what, I'm tired of this fucking job, I want to become self-employed, or I want to start a business. And then they think that they can go into being self-employed with the same habits and the same lifestyle that they had with their regular job. It's not going to happen, buddy. Trust me, you just won't be able to. You won't be able to get by. Another example of bankroll management is just simply keeping extremely good tabs on your capital outflows, your capital inflows for your company, and keeping a safety net, because you don't know how good the next year is going to be. You can get an idea, and I guess the more stability you build in your company, the more established you are, you're going to have a better idea of what's possible and what's not possible. But at first, when you're first starting a business, bankroll management is absolutely crucial, because you have no freaking idea how good or bad these things are going to end up. And you just don't think that you do. You don't know the outcomes, right? You can have an idea, you never know what the outcome is going to be. It's the same thing as placing a trade in a stock market. Point number 2, which ties into point number 1, is research. So you have to do a lot of research when you're self-employed and you own a company. You need to do more research about the investments you make. So if you're managing bankroll and you're deciding to invest, let's say you're established and you have a bit of cash on hand and you want to decide to make some investments, for example, what this results in is the people who run the shit need to become extremely knowledgeable about the investments that they're making, or where they're deciding to put their money and what opportunities they're investing in. So an example of that today is that I'm only learning about more advanced ways to borrow money or earn money on borrowed money type of thing. So like, prepaid credit cards and using margin from a trading account to pay bills and all that. Interesting, right? So as someone who is self-employed, myself, who has had bad experiences in the past, everyone has, who's been through anything, right? I'm generally more risk averse at first. And I need to study something to a greater extent before deciding to invest in it or put money into it or even consider it as a potential opportunity. So if I don't understand the market I'm in and its participants, I don't trade it. The next point here is point number 3, which I think is time learning new skills. As someone who's building a company, building an empire, you generally need to be a lot more resourceful than the average person. If you don't have help to learn these skills, you probably need to learn these things on your own, and learning new skills takes time. You can't just expect to learn how to program WebSockets in one day. In today's day and age, it might take you a week with ChatGPT, of course. But the main thing is, of course, it takes time to program this stuff. It takes time to learn new skills, and you can't be in a rush. So this is where you need to remind yourself of why you're doing this stuff in the first place. And if money is all that motivates you, in my opinion, it's not enough to keep you motivated in the long run. You have to have some sort of greater purpose. Lucky for me, I spent a lot of time learning skills in the last 10 years, and I still learn new skills today. But I guess, like I said, as you get older, you have to make more concentrated decisions to leverage your current skill set rather than going out and changing to a completely new skill set or learning something that's way out of your pay grade, right? Like a year ago, I thought coding was way out of my pay grade, and I realized a few months in that it wasn't, and it was actually not as hard as I thought. But there are certain things that are pretty freaking insane, and thanks to AI, I've been able to learn stuff fast, which is interesting. But you still have to spend the time learning it and programming the stuff, and there's also no guarantee that you're going to get anything out of anything that you learn. You could just end up with all these skills and, nothing going on, no income from any of it, right? So you're really playing a slow game here, guys. The last sacrifice about being self-employed here is that generally there's more uncertainty involved with being self-employed. It takes time to develop a business, and there's never any guarantees. When you're newly self-employed, it can take a lot longer to build your stability up. So going back to what I said about bankroll management, if you are just starting out, you might have an idea, but you really don't know what you're going to be making at the end of the year. It's kind of hard to give yourself a budget of spending if you don't really know what your income and your outcome is at this point yet. But also there's another side to this, which is because you're self-employed, the more deeper you get into it, if you actually end up building something that can become stable, a stable company that provides a legitimate service, and you have clients that rely on you for whatever service that you're providing, there's actually less uncertainty depending on the industry you're in the short term, that is, meaning that you won't just wake up one day and all of your customers are gone type of thing. Whereas if you work a regular job, there is a chance that you can be fired the next day and get a 2-week notice. All right, let's go on. If you guys made it this far, press the like button. And if you want to support me, you can click on the first link in the description and check out my stockbroker, interactivebrokers.com. They have a great website. It's actually quite fast. So let's go on and talk about the main benefits of being self-employed, from my opinion of being self-employed for 8 years or more. You get to work towards a greater purpose. That's the first thing. So do you guys ever think, what's the point to life? Why am I here? These existential type of questions. Some people know what they're here to do for some reason, and other people just have no clue. I've met a few people that just have no idea what their purpose is, and they just think that they're totally mediocre in everything they do, and they just don't know what they have to offer. The one piece of advice I could share regarding this is, when it comes to, the business marketplace, the self-employed marketplace, freelancing, or even maybe getting a regular job, you have to know your worth first, and you have to know your skills second. Question you can ask, a general question is, what can you bring to the table, and how do you provide value to others? I think if everybody took some time away from social media, they could put themselves to good use much faster. I think everybody is useful. And the reason I say get off social media is because there's tons of programming out there today that, throws people off track. If you're a man and you don't know what you're good at, you're probably good at something, okay? You're probably good at problem solving. You're probably good at getting some stuff done. Men are good at getting stuff done. Whatever you're good at getting done, that's what you're good at, my friend. Find stuff you're good at and find your value, know your worth, know your skills. And then hold yourself to that regard. You know, don't do work for less than what you know you're worth. And then it comes down to, of course, knowing your worth relative to the marketplace that you're operating in. Like if you're just getting into landscaping, you can't just go in and charge as much as the guy who's been doing it for 20 years. You know what I mean? You have to sort of ease your way in. You can undercut the competition and people know that you are less experienced than the guys that have been doing it for a longer time, but that's how you ease your way into the industry. How I'm going to tie this in is the more you learn about what you are good at and what you have to offer, the more you can work towards what is your greater purpose of what it is that you are trying to do. So if you're self-employed, you want to start a company, you can have a company that's based on a certain industry where there's an opportunity to make financial gains. You need some sort of greater purpose. Either it's a purpose of making people's lives better, helping people get stuff done better, faster, more efficiently. Whatever problem that you're solving relates to the greater purpose. Okay? The next benefit of being self-employed, you don't always work on a fixed schedule. This could be both a pro and a con. So, humans, we have a circadian rhythm, and certain financial opportunities, here's an example, they tend to occur at certain times of the day. So you could say, yeah, I'm self-employed, I work when I want, but the market starts moving at 9:30 in the morning, or the bond market opens at 8:20 in the morning, Eastern time. And if you want to trade bonds, and if you want to trade that morning auction, if you want to trade the GDP number, or whatever number you're trading, CPI, you have to be up at that time and ready to trade. So you could say I work my own business, but you still have to coincide to some real world, hours. So you're going to be forced in some regard to abide by societal norms or norms regarding the industry that you're in. People that own businesses generally work much more than the average person, especially when you're in a busy time of developing your business or expanding or building something new. So if you're, that's an example of one of the sacrifices, right? The benefit is that on other days, you can wake up in peace, knowing you are serving that greater purpose and God is with you for this journey. You're basically free to live as you wish and you don't have to answer to a boss. So that's one of the plus sides of it. Of course, you can end up working 16-hour days and not see any benefit. So if you're not into that, then maybe self-employed is not for you. The next pro here is the ability to avoid societal norms and societal programming. You're never going to be able to avoid it completely, but here's an example. As someone who works on their own time, I have more freedom to go to public places when they're less full of people, and I really appreciate this. So going to the gym in the evening after peak hour has passed, that's an example, or purposely training on the weekend in order to avoid busy Mondays at the gym. The gym I go to, they move to a more popular location, so there's a lot more people, they got a lot of memberships, and there's a lot of what I call noobs or weasels or two-bits as my dad would call them. And I've been training for 10 years of my life. Maybe it doesn't show, but I'm pretty fucking strong, I gotta say. Comment on the video if you guys want to see a 225 PR. Another example is trying to run your errands, or the privilege of being able to run your errands not during rush hour, purposely staying off the road during rush hour if possible, right? Because you don't necessarily get out of the office at a specific time of day all the time. And then of course, one of the benefits of being self-employed is the infinite income potential, but of course with great reward normally comes an extreme amount of work, an extreme amount of sacrifices, like some of the ones we've described already. What I can say regarding infinite income potential is this: working smart is mostly better than working hard and fast. I do think that when it comes to capturing opportunities, you do need to be fast. So it is sort of a tough balance. I think if you take the time to do things right, which most people don't, by the way, I've seen this, and especially in software that exists today, there is less of a chance that things will come back to haunt you later. So slow and steady moves towards a longer term end goal, a longer term purpose, should bring you more longer term stability and longer term consistency. Whereas the opposite is fast or rushed work sometimes can lead to fast results, right? Fast money, right? but can also lead to long-term consequences. For example, you come out and you release a poorly developed software, there's all kinds of problems. People eventually will find the problems. Or you come out with some sort of a product that looks really good on the surface, and eventually maybe 3, 4, 5 years later, people realize, it was all a marketing thing. It really wasn't anything special to begin with. And what that is an example of fast money, long-term consequences. So I definitely prefer the idea of work slow, work efficiently, do it right. Less chances there are that things are going to come back to haunt you in the future. All right, guys, I really hope that this video helped you learn more about the perspective of being self-employed from someone who's actually been self-employed for a very long time. Let me know what you thought of it down below, and thank you for watching. Click here to watch a new video or an old video that you might like, and click here to watch an awesome playlist of videos like this. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Take care.